talking to you guys about the introduction to the JAMStack. I'll introduce myself briefly. I didn't know Mark was going to do a good job, but so I'm senior software developer at level 20. Like Mark said, it's the growth incubator for Progressive. We are physically located outside of Progressive Insurance, so we're downtown Cleveland. We're a small office. 3 teams, very cross-functional. We're tasked of like creating new businesses for the company that are not auto insurance. So it's a pretty cool place to work. I mean, Progressive in general and level 20 as well. So we're still growing. We're still hiring more devs and designers and everybody. So that's a little plug here. But feel free to reach out if you're interested. I did my bachelor's in computer science and engineering at Ohio State. And I've been with GiveBackHack for the last 3 years, organizing the event here in Cleveland. I've actually attended the first one in Columbus, and then started organizing here in Cleveland. That's how I met Mark, like he said, and others too that typically are like Sean, I think, usually is in this meetup that I've met a lot of cool people. And yeah, Robert Half has been a really great supporter of the event, and Mark specifically. I'm also part of an organization that's related to the World Economic Forum called Global Shapers, and that's also in Cleveland, and it's social impact focused. So I try to bring whatever technologies I can to that space. And I originally from Syria. I grew up there. I moved to the US about 10 years ago now, and finally I just bought a house. So I'm really excited about that. Also, like realizing how little I know about home ownership, and I've lived in apartments all my life. So it's fun, but we'll see how that goes. So that's a little bit about me. So today we're going to be talking about the JAMStack. Hopefully get a little taste of that. No pun intended, but maybe you'll feel like Joey at the end. I really like this dev stack, so hopefully I'll be able to introduce it to you. So it's modern JAMStack is a modern web development architecture based on client-side JavaScript, reusable APIs, and pre-built markup. And the highlighted letters is where the word jam comes from. I think it started around I don't know, 5 years ago. People started talking about it. I think the term came around about 5 years ago, and since 2018 is when it really started to pick up. So the 3 main components of the JAMStack. So JavaScript, this is what controls the dynamic functionality. They're handled by JavaScript. There's really no restriction on which framework or library you use. Vue, React, Angular, those frameworks, or you can even do like a pure HTML, vanilla JavaScript, and CSS. So that's like from the JavaScript side. Then you communicate with APIs and servers, and that's how you abstract the server side by communicating with reusable APIs that they're accessed through JavaScript over HTTPS. On the right here, I have the CMS version, which is like the Contentful Netlify CMS, but also you're not going to be rebuilding a payment platform, but you're going to use Stripe, for example, or Twilio, and just calling APIs over HTTPS. And then finally, with markup, the websites are served as static HTML files. These can be generated from source files and such as markup using static site generators like the ones here, Gatsby, Hugo, Next. Really, each one of them focuses on an underlying JavaScript framework. But yeah, so these are the main 3 components of the Jam. The benefits of this, and these 5 benefits I just like took from the JAMStack website, but basically faster performance. Since you have all the markup and assets are pre-built, and they can be served via CDN, and just provides better performance and easier scalability. For in terms of security, when you're like you don't have to worry about the server or database vulnerabilities, because they don't exist in this stack. And then you're really offloading the security to third-party services like Netlify, Contentful, Stripe, all of that, and they have the domain knowledge of securing this data, and or like their services. Um, from like an expense, it's like really cheap or even free. Like with like Netlify example, you can go really far without having to pay a dime for hosting or serving any of this. And really the best thing for me is like it's a better developer experience. If you want to focus more on the front end, on delivering business value, you can do that very quickly without having to be tied to like a monolithic architecture, or trying to spend a lot of time trying to set things up. It's already set up for you and you can just get up and running. It's really helpful. Like, I think it's the way to go for like, if you want to prototype something very quickly, it's the fastest way I think to go. But it also at the same time, if you can build like production applications with this as well. So some people have been building like e-commerce websites with like Gatsby, which is, I thought it is insane, but it's working and a lot of people are doing it. And then finally scalability. So yeah, you can start with something small and it's just really easy to scale. Just this CDN will seamlessly compensate as you go. By the way, I don't have a lot of slides and we're just gonna write code afterwards. So I think this one is maybe the last one or second to last. So today I plan on going through an app, creating an app from scratch using Gatsby, which these four main things. So Gatsby is the framework that does static site. It's a static site generator. It's built on top of React, and it compiles a React components and the React application really to a static HTML, and then it creates those web pages that are like really fast. If you can when you deploy them and you do like a Lighthouse, for example, Google Lighthouse performance test, they really excel. Gatsby's been like really excelling when I test those things. And then the coolest thing about Gatsby for me is that it has a huge ecosystem of themes, plugins, and starter projects that you can just pick up and build on top of. So it makes it really easy to excuse me, to get started. The second thing is going to be GraphQL. So GraphQL is kind of built into Gatsby, and it's like the preferred way of communicating with APIs. It's developed originally by Facebook a few years back, and then they open sourced it. And it really provides complete and like understandable description of the data that's coming in from the API. It gives like it basically moves the responsibility to the client to decide what data it wants, and you get only that. So for example, if you have typically in a REST API, you have like multiple URLs, and then you do a get on the first one, you get part of the data. You don't need all the data, you get parts of it, and then you go do another get and get another part, and then you combine it and do whatever you want with it on the client. With GraphQL, you're able to get as many resources in a single request, and you specify exactly what you need, the parts of the data that you need, just because there's like the schema that is provided by the GraphQL API, and then that's all you get. So it really helps with performance, and it makes it a lot easier for like if you have teams of front end and back end developers. It makes it a lot easier to work together with GraphQL. Third is Contentful. So Contentful is a headless CMS. It's API. It's built like API first. So the platform is just like really a way to create, manage, and publish content for any like digital channel. So you can basically create your data models, you add your data, you add your assets, and then you publish it. Today we're going to use the content delivery API to get this data to our app and just use it. So there's multiple ways. I'll explain it later when we get to Contentful. And finally, Netlify. I think this is like the peanut butter for the JAMStack. It works really well when you compare it to other platforms that allow you to build, test, and deploy your web apps. I think Netlify like ranks really towards the top. It's really minimal setup time, especially if you're doing things like the vanilla way, like you're not making a lot of like configuration changes. And then I think Azure just came out with something like they call it static web apps. I saw it like 2 days ago, so I'm not sure if I think that's like going to be very similar to Netlify. And then like AWS, you can do it in an S3 bucket or like use the pipelines, but Amplify makes it a little bit easier. I don't think it's as easy as Netlify because it's just like a one-click thing with Netlify. So, and then the last slide I have here is this is a screenshot straight out of the Gatsby website because I think it's helpful to explain what I'm trying to do today. Basically, what we are going to do with hopefully like in an hour or less is build like a Gatsby website, using some React components. We're going to fetch some data or query it from a local JSON file at first using GraphQL, and then we're going to fetch it again. We're going to move to a Contentful CMS and fetch the data from there. That's an API call, also using GraphQL, and then we will deploy this to Netlify and set up like a CI/CD pipeline that just it updates our project, I guess, or like our deployed project every time there's a code change and every time there's a data change from the CMS. So it might be ambitious that I get all of that, but if I do, I think I can prove that like how easy it is to work with a JAMStack. Any questions before I jump into the demo?
Everyone can feel free to unmute and ask questions whenever they want, or you can ask questions in the chat and I will interrupt Feras for you.
Are you using JAMStack in production today?
At like level 20?
Mm-hmm.
We're not using it right now. Our stack is more React without like Gatsby. I guess parts of it you can say it's part of the JAMStack, but we're not really utilizing the like a headless CMS like this. But I think there is as I'm building this, as I was working on this presentation and sharing it with my colleagues, we've talked about like, oh, this would be cool for certain like projects. So I think we're going to think about it for smaller projects, not like progressive scale projects, like not millions of people, but maybe like I don't know, like the level20.com website, like a marketing website or something. I think that could be possible, but right now we're not using it in production.
Cool.
All right. Okay, so let me get out of here. Okay. So I needed something to demo when I wanted to build this. So I found this. Wait, can you guys see my screen still? Like, do you see? Yeah, okay. So I found this article from CNET. It's about a different way of watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It lists them not the way they came out, but the way they happened in that universe. So I hope I'm not spoiling anything for anyone, but basically what I'm thinking of doing here is instead of this picture that they just have, we make it more interactive website. We basically use this data to create a timeline similar to this. So first things first, what you need to do is you need to, so for Gatsby, we're going to start with Gatsby. So what you need to do is you need to install the Gatsby CLI. I already have that. It's really just npm install Gatsby CLI global. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new project here. So Gatsby new, then we'll call it, I don't know, Akron MCU. So just to show you here, this is really what I'm doing. I'm just doing the quick start, and then we'll go from there. So you install the CLI, you start your project, and then you initiate it. The one thing I wanted to show too is, instead of what I did here is I did get Gatsby new and then the name of my project. You can also add if you add a starter. So there's a lot of starters. Like I mentioned before, there's a really big ecosystem with Gatsby. So let's say, I don't know, blog is a famous one, or like a most popular one. Excuse me. And if you like, let's say you like that, you can go and like look at the demo, and you want to start from here instead of starting from the base project. You can, all you need to do is you just need to add that repository URL after the name of your project, and then you're up and running, and you have their code and all the integrations that they've already made. So I think that's pretty cool to help you get started faster. So I'm going to start the project. Can you guys see the font well, or do I need to make it bigger? Okay. All right, and then this will build or start the server, and we're going to be on 8,000. So again, nothing really special here. You do the same thing with any JavaScript framework, really. So let's walk through the app. Oops. If I want to do a new tab. Okay. All right, is this big enough? Or do I go? Okay. So again, yeah, there's nothing special here. Your yarn log file, README file, package JSON. So again, this is built on React. So you need to bring React here, and some of like the original Gatsby dependencies. Nothing fancy. This is the main thing here, which is the Gatsby config JS. This is where you can extract it, but you can also have your site metadata in here. The plugins, which we'll talk about in more detail in a bit, are all in this Gatsby config. And then the other ones are more for like specific scenarios when you want to do like server-side rendering, or you want to access the node, like node APIs or browser API. You will have more to do here. I haven't done anything where I needed to do this or much in these files, so I'm going to skip them for now. But they offer good documentation in each one of those. This is the prettier ignore stuff, nothing fancy here too. So the pages, so if we look on here, so this is our route. This is index. So basically your routes are pages. So when you create page -2, this is page -2 route. And it's using the link router from Gatsby just to be able to route. This is like React stuff. And then your 404 page. Again, nothing crazy here. And then you can have your components that you can load in your Gatsby site in general. The big one here, the main one is layout. The way they have it is that they have this React a component, and it really just takes children, it really helps you to have you structure your site that way. So you have your like header and footer, and then everything inside is just the like the children. So when I went to this page, again, this is part of the layout. So like everything in here is part of is being rendered as a child prop of that layout, and then these two are outside. You can use, again, this is React, so you can use inline styling, or you can do like CSS separately. You can do CSS and JavaScript. Really, so if you know React, you'll know this stuff. If you don't, I recommend that you start with React first and then go to Gatsby. It just makes things a lot easier to understand. Again, this is like just header component, SEO component. This is like cool because if you notice, this SEO is being used in in index, I think. Where is it? Yeah, so it really just adds, you don't need to worry, you can set it up once, and it's pulling the information from your metadata, and then you can set up your search engine optimization stuff like right through here. I'm not going to spend more time on this stuff because we're going to be using some of it. And then the rest is like your node module, your public, and your cache. So any questions so far? All right, so if I go to layout, let me talk about GraphQL for a little bit. So what we're doing here is we're bringing GraphQL from Gatsby, and we're bringing this use static query. And then this is our query. Our query says, well, okay, go to site metadata and pull title out of it. Where is this coming from? This is under Gatsby config. We have our site metadata, title. I can bring description if I want. I can bring author. Really, all I need on this page is title. So I'm not going to bring everything. I only bring what I want or what I need. The other place to see this is if you guys noticed when I ran the server, it also started this GraphQL playground. If I go here, let me just get rid of this. So this is basically, they have some docs here which they explain some stuff. It explains the schema, but what I can do here is if without having to think a lot really about, the query I'm writing, I can just go to site, and it has site metadata and title, description, and author. Let's load all these three. There you go. It's loading my site metadata that I defined in the Gatsby config. If I only want title, like we had in that on that SEO page or that layout page, that's all I get. So again, that's like the performance bit of GraphQL, where you only ask for what you want and you get exactly that. We're going to do more complicated GraphQL queries in a bit. So, but basically, this is really helpful with Gatsby because it comes out of the box and it helps you create your queries. And then all they're doing here is just grabbing this data that came back and grabbing using the title to do the header. So if I go to here and I say, instead of this, I want to call it like I don't know, what do we want to call it? Marvel. And I go here. This is my new title. Fetch it again. This is it. So that's cool. I guess that's all right. Not that cool, but let's do a little bit more, something a little bit more involved. So okay, well we have right now this thing. Let's clear the stuff that we don't need. So I'm going to go to index, and I'm going to get rid of everything. I'll keep SEO. And then, so I have some notes with some bits of code that I'm going to copy paste, so you don't have to watch me type. So, this is our updated our index, but okay, let's say we want to load, I don't know, the first 4 data, and then we want to do it from JSON. What I can do here is I can create a new file or folder called data, and then a file called data.json. I will, oops, let's see, copy this. So this is typical, right? You have a set of data set in a JSON format. You want to load that. You want to use that on your website somewhere. One way you could import this, use a JSON parser, and this is how you typically do it in another like a React application. Or what Gatsby has this something called plugins, which is another thing I wanted to talk about. So plugins is really a like a bunch of node packages that implement the Gatsby APIs. You just download the plugin from npm, and then you enable it in the Gatsby config file, and then the difficult part is done for you. All you need to do is use it. So if I search for JSON, and like I recommend that you search for something before you try to do it, because someone has already done it usually. So this Gatsby transformer JSON is what I need, because what it does is just it parses raw JSON strings, and then it moves them into a JavaScript objects that I can use in my app. So I'm going to add that. And then here it says we need to add this plugin. This is how we would use it. So I come in here, and let's see if I add it. So all it is you bring that after you added it, add the npm dependency, and then the other. So this is really it for the JSON transformer. But if you notice here, we had this options here. We're using another plugin called the Gatsby source file system, and what that is doing is it allows you to access the local file system. So I'm going to copy this, and instead of images, I'm going to do data. Oops. So because this is what we have, right? We're inside this data folder. That's the data we want to access via JSON. Cool. So, all right, why did we do all of that? We wanted to be able to do GraphQL queries against JSON. I think you need to restart the server when you do that. When you add a plugin, you need to restart the server.
So it's not that you added a file there, it's that you added a plugin.
I believe it's the plugin, yeah. So if I refresh here, look at that. You see all data JSON. And that is, so I'm going to start creating my query. I come in here and I'm like, okay, edges, node, and then you'll see that title, subtitle is movie. And this is really returning the array of data that I put in my JSON. Like I want to use all of that. I'll query all of it. I only want to use title, for example. Well, cool. I'll only get title. So let's use this in the app. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to create this timeline component, and I'm going to paste the code and go over it with you guys. So again, you're not watching me type. and it's easier, so I don't mistype something. So again, another React component, importing React, adding the GraphQL. This is the query we just wrote in. Actually, I don't need this because I'm not using the other ones. I'm only using a title, and basically I'm doing a map over this data that came back from the GraphQL query, and I'm saying, okay, show me all the titles in an unordered list. So if I save, oops, and look here. Did I not save? What did I do? Oh, I'm not using this timeline component. I need to go add it somewhere here. So I'm going to use this timeline component on the main page. And there we go. So what this is doing is just using the JSON transformer plugin to fetch data from a JSON file that's in our local directory. Again, this can be here. It can be in like a service somewhere else. But just for purposes of demoing this, I thought I'll show this plugin and fetch the data from JSON. Only 4 so far. So I think this is a good stopping point to do the next thing that I like to do usually. Whenever I start a project and I know I'm going to be deploying to Netlify, I try to set up my CI/CD pipeline as early as possible, just to get the habit of it and get things like figured out from the beginning, and then I forget about it. I don't touch it ever after. So I'm going to add now my files to GitHub. I don't know, query from JSON. And what did we call this? Akron MCU. So if I go to Git, and then I add a new repository. This is, again, typical GitHub stuff. Then we'll connect this repository to what we have and push the code up. I went fast here because I'm assuming everybody does GitHub at this point, or some form of version control. So my code is now up at GitHub, on GitHub. Well, okay, cool. If you use GitHub Pages, you can use GitHub Pages to deploy your site. I chose to, and I like Netlify. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to Netlify, log in, and look at that. I mean, I have a lot of websites that I just like. It's usually a lot of them are like useless, but it works and it's there and it's free. So again, you can use any Git provider, or I guess these 3 Git providers. I happen to be using GitHub. And what is it? Akron MCU. So I choose the repository and I define the branch I want to be looking at. And it knows automatically, I think it looks at the package JSON, it knows that it's a Gatsby site. So it gives me the build command. If I want to add like more, more options to this, I can here. And it knows to look at the public folder after the build to get those files and serve them. You can add like variables, which we will do in a bit. We don't have any environment variables right now, but this is like, think of your like AWS secret manager. You can put your secrets here, or any environment variables that you're using in the app. So I click on deploy site and it's up and running. Sometimes it queues it if they have a lot of like, it depends on the time when you're doing this, but usually it's pretty fast. So if I click on this, I think it's going to start very soon. While this is happening, I can walk you guys through Netlify a little bit. So if we look at the deploy settings, I just talked about this. It automatically it defines this like automatically, but you can change it. It automatically builds and deploys the previews for pull requests. So like if you're working with multiple people and you have pull requests, every time there's a pull request, the site gets rebuilt, and then you can even run tests. So you don't have you don't merge a pull request that's breaking any with breaking changes. So you can do that here. A lot of this stuff comes with like I guess AWS pipelines, or you can do that. You can do that with Azure, but there's a setup. Always there's a setup needed. Here, I didn't have to do anything. It's already set up for me. Let's see if this is. So once this is done, so this is really just doing a webhook and looking at this repository at this time. I can go through more Netlify stuff, I guess, or if you guys have any questions while this is building.
Does Netlify have a CLI?
I believe so. I think so, yeah. Yeah, they do. I haven't used it really because most of the time I'm like, it's just like a one click here and I forget about it really. But yeah, I think you can do everything you want from the CLI. So let's see. All right, so this has been published. They give you this netlify.app domain. Again, similar to like if you're in an S3 bucket in AWS. And voila, our website that we just did here is live on a public URL. Cool. All right, so we've done that. Now, the cool thing that Netlify does here is because it's looking at this repo, every time I merge something to master or push something to master, it's going to pick it up, redeploy, rebuild the app, and deploy it. And we'll see it again on the same URL. Okay, so I guess the next thing is to make this a little bit prettier than just like an unordered list. There is this like React vertical timeline component that I just found, like somebody did an NPM package for it. All it does is create this like timeline. So we're gonna use it. So instead of writing our own CSS, because who wants to write CSS ever? At least I don't. So, okay, so we bring this package, and then we're going to update our timeline component. So I'm going to copy some code here. That's not where I want. I want under timeline. Okay, so what this, and I need to do some imports. So again, we're importing this package, and we're saying we want the movie card to be red, the show card to be blue, and in here we're mapping over the same query we have here. But notice here I only have title. I need to add the things that are also needed, which will be, what did we say they are? Subtitle and is movie. Okay, and I think I wrote this. This is not the way I wanted it. 1 second. This would be is. So what I'm doing here is I'm querying the JSON file, and I am looping over, I'm mapping over it, and I'm getting each node, which is the object that has a title, a Boolean, if whether it's a movie or not, and this is a ternary that's changing the style of the card. And then I'm putting the title in an H3. So if I didn't mess anything up, this should look a little bit nicer than what we had. Cool. Now let's test the Netlify thing to see if that works or not. So yeah, we added 3 things. So if I can type, And what did we call this timeline? And we push this. So, okay, let's look at GitHub. We added another commit. We added this new commit. Netlify automatically saw it, and it says this was triggered by this commit. It's going to build and deploy the application. I think that's pretty cool because it just happens. And again, you can set it up in other platforms. Netlify makes it really easy. All right. The other thing that Netlify can do here that I like is like split testing. If I activate this for this, we don't have a second branch, but if you have a second branch, you can like percent by percent randomly make like do a split test. So you have like a branch with a different feature. You can specify how many of your visitors access that that branch. The other thing is that's cool is forms. So a lot of times I'm building a website that like is completely static and there's like one page that's contact us, and I don't want to like I want to do something really simple. All I need is like to take that form and send it in an email maybe or something. And Netlify helps you do that by really, you have a form like a typical HTML form, and then you just add the word Netlify to it. When you do that, Netlify looks for it in your I guess deployed code after you build, and it sends it takes the input of that form and sends it to you. So, and that's free. I think that's free. I think if you want more than one, maybe you start paying, but I think it's free. I've used it only once. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so this is published. So if I go here, we have our timeline. All right, so enough with so I guess this is so far when we look at this at Gatsby here, what I was explaining earlier is we've started this Gatsby file or project. We used some React components to make and updated it, and then we used GraphQL to make to fetch data or make a query from a JSON file that we have. The next and we deployed to Netlify. The next thing I want to do is now bring in Contentful. Okay, so what the hell is this Contentful thing? So Contentful, as I said, headless CMS. It's one of the ones that are, which makes sense, I guess, that's more restricted in terms of like how much they offer for free, because it's like managing your data, holding on to your data, and then giving you APIs to access it. So it makes sense. You are limited to 2 spaces in each account you have, and then you start paying. And then I think there's tiers for like how many developers are using Contentful. For me, for the purposes of this, I'm good. Again, as I said, I'm probably going to delete this one and reuse this space for a different app after this. So what can you do with Contentful, or like what's the structure of this thing? So you have your content model. For example, an MCU event is what I created here, and I really mimicked what we had in the JSON. I just added an image. So you can add fields. They have a lot out of the box. You can do your custom one in JSON format if you want, but there's a lot that come out of the box that's usually enough for basic needs. This is like they have the type. So these are like the short text type. I have this as a Boolean. You can make stuff like required or not. You can default them. This image is basically a reference to an asset that I created here. So if I go to media, you'll see all the assets that I created for the pictures that we're going to use. And then in terms of content, this is where you actually create your content. This is like filtering. So I can come in here and I can add an entry, and I decided it's an MCU event content model type, and then it gives me the option to do this, and I can reference an image. They have this concept of draft, so like you can have a bunch of stuff in draft and then publish them all at once, or you can archive it. I'm going to delete this because I don't need it. So I pre-populated this because I didn't want to spend time on it. They do have a CLI. I think it's a little bit limited in terms of like, I think you can upload a JSON to populate this content, but there might be some limitation with some stuff. I haven't really also used the CLI for this. But the cool thing, what I like about this is that for a business person who wants to make a change, like they can come in here and just add an entry. Like you can give them access. They can come in here, add an entry, and then publish it themselves, or they can keep it as draft, and then if you don't allow them to do that, and then you do the publishing, it's all possible from here.
How does this differ from like WordPress and? Yeah.
It's very similar. I mean, WordPress is another CMS, and I think there's WordPress headless.
What do you mean by headless too?
So you're not. So when you say headless, I'm not looking at their. How do I explain it? Well, so
you can't do post requests.
Well, no, you can do post for this one, but this is really, I'm just I'm talking to the API directly. I don't have I'm not using their UI for it. I mean, there's no, like, this is serving the content only.
Okay.
And it's not, right? Like there's the UI here is it's like an admin UI to edit, to make changes, but not to publish it anywhere. And really you're just doing it via like API calls. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, when I guess with WordPress, you would be tying your app to, like in WordPress, you can use their UIs and you can make changes to it and make changes to the front end, right? In this one, there's like no front end. It's your, like, what we're creating, Gatsby, is the front end, is the customer facing version of
Okay, so it's more like customizable, and you don't have to FTPS into WordPress to get the files out.
Yeah, no,
That's complicated.
None of that, no.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm looking here. Is there a question in the like an Amazon Alexa device with no video screen? Yes, yeah. Thank you for Ed for explaining that. So okay, so the other thing in here in the Contentful is, if I go here and I look at the API keys, we're getting recorded, right? We're recording this, right, Mark? Okay, well, I guess whatever.
Yep, I think so.
That's fine. You guys can see my access token. I'll change it. So it provides you a space ID and this like content delivery API access token. So basically, these are the two things that you need to make a call, an API call, and get the data. You can also have this. They have this like preview API. This is just for things that are like in draft status and not published. So let's say you have a blog, you did a post, but you kept it in draft, and you want to fetch that into your app and allow them to publish it. You can do it through this one, and then the customer, and then you use the delivery API to actually to display the published one. So the other thing I want to say about the content delivery API, this is get request only. You can't do mutations or puts or posts on it. This is just to deliver data to you. There's another API, I'm forgetting the name of it, and I don't know why it's not here, that Contentful provides, where you can make changes to the data. We're not going to be using it today because we're not going to be making changes, but just thought I explained that because it's a little different. So with that being said, let's bring Contentful to our app. Another cool thing is Contentful has a plugin. So typically, if you have an API you want to call it, you maybe bring Axios and you make a HTTP get through that, and that's how you do it. Well, here, there basically it's a way to incentivize these service providers, like these services, like Contentful, to create. Some of it is open source, obviously, and someone has created, and a lot of times it's Contentful that's creating this. But there's this plugin that I can use, and it will make it really easy for me to talk to the API. So all I need to do is I need to do the yarn install. Where is it here? Or the yarn add. So here I'm adding Contentful. And then I have to bring the delivery API plugin to my Gatsby config. So here you can see that it requires a space ID and it requires an access token. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use an environment variable so I don't check in my, that's like good practice always, to not check in your variables. So I'm going to use space ID and access token. Let's create.
Are you missing the plugin name there?
You're right, I think. 1 second. So actually, this resolve is the plugin. This resolve is the plugin name. So here, what we did here, this was the transformer JSON, but that one requires another plugin, which is the source file system. So you can see like the same thing with Helmet, I think. Or no, actually, this is not related to the Helmet is separate, and then this guy is basically the file system for images, and then this is the one for data. So I think this will work without having it outside.
Okay, so like Gatsby transformer JSON doesn't need options. So like if all you would have is resolve, then you can just put it by itself.
Exactly, yeah. And if I go back to it, I think if we look here, there are options, but I chose not to use them. And I don't, wait a minute, did I? Oh no, these are not, these are the ones for this file system, but I think if you have options, it will tell you if you need to. Yeah, so like for example, this has an options of you're specifying the type name, and you would add that then. If not, you don't have to do anything. You can just use this piece by itself. Does that make sense? Also, this is probably small. Yeah. Okay, so now I just need to add an environment variable. So let me add .env. And I here added my environment variables. I think with Gatsby config, you have to require it. Like for me, the last time I did it, it didn't let me, it didn't know what the environment variables are without requiring it here. So I'm going to do that. I wish it didn't. You don't have to do it, but I'm not sure. Because I know in React, I think out of the box, if your environment variable has a prefix that says React, it will automatically pick it up in Node. So anyways, we added that. And now we can come in here, or if you guys remember, we have to restart our server because we added a new plugin. And if we go to the GraphQL playground, look at that. Now we're able to fetch stuff from Contentful. So there's a bunch of stuff that come out of the, like this asset and content type, but the one we're interested in is this MCU event. So if I do this, I go to edges, I go to node. here are my, like there's other stuff obviously that gets added to your fields. We don't need them now. So I'm going to just say subtitle is movie. And if I want the image, it's another node, and then you need to go to the file and then the URL of that image. And that's the one that you would use. So look at that. We get all of our data in just this simple query. Okay, so what do I want to do next? So we can use that now in our timeline component. So so if I change this, copy this and paste it here. And now instead of using, I think we were using here all data JSON, we're going to use this. I believe this is right, but let's see. Okay. Nice. So we're pulling data now. It's not just 4, it's now all of them. And that's coming from Contentful. It's no longer coming from the JSON file that we had. You can do other stuff with how do I get rid of this? You can do another thing with this is like, let's say you want to filter them, right? Let's say you only want the movies. What you could do is you could do filter and then is movie, and you want to say it's equal to true. Done. You only get movies. So again, GraphQL gives you that power to say, I only want this. Don't give me a bunch of data that I don't need, and then you're good to go. And that's that. I mean, that's exactly what you would get. So let's deploy this. Actually, I'm not making a lot of jumps. What I did, if you notice here, like the setup, even if we get rid of this, this is not ordered. And I really didn't have a best way to order it. You can order based, like you can do sort, and then you specify the field and you can say, well, okay, I want to look at maybe, I think created at, like when it was created. And then I want to order it ascending. If I do that, I get some sort of order because I started in order when I added them, but then like later I added bunch at the same time. So that's not the right order. So I can't really rely on this. So what I ended up doing is I went to Contentful here. It's probably not the best way to do it, but that's the fastest I could think of, is I created this new content model called MCU order timeline. And if you look at the fields that it just has a name, and then it has a reference one-to-many, all titles in a chronological order. And if I go look at the content here, all this is doing is giving it a title and then referencing all of the content I had from the other data model, but in a specific order. So this is like an ordered list that Contentful provides. So what we're going to do, instead of using this one, we're going to use all Contentful MCU order timeline, different data set. We'll go to same thing, edges, node. You get the idea now. Wait, what am I missing? Oh, because there's one more up here. So it's title, subtitle, is movie, and URL. If you don't like the click stuff, it's like it gets old at some point, and then you'll know exactly what your queries are, and you start writing them. But I'm just showing this Explorer version. But yeah, so this is, you get all of that, and now this is in order. Oh, look at that Captain America shirtless picture. Okay, so the last thing, how are we doing on time, Mark?
You've been going for about an hour, so.
Okay. I think I'm almost done. I think there's one more thing I would like to show, and then I'll be done. And if you guys have any questions, we can go over them. So let me go here. Is that okay, Mark?
Yeah, man. I mean, again, usually these go until 8. So if you're
okay.
done, then we're completely good.
Great. All right. So let me. I'm going to update this and go over it again with you guys and just delete this stuff. So again, we have this component, not much, I didn't change much, but I just brought the new query that's using the ordered timeline. And I'm using it, and I'm also now using the image. So this source is coming from each event that I'm mapping over, and I'm grabbing the file, the image file URL. So if I go here and I refresh, well, it already refreshed, you'll see that I have everything in order and with images. So, okay, so what's left? We're going to push this, and I want to show you two more things, I guess. So I think this is going to fail from Netlify. Does anyone know why? So this should pick up a new deploy, but this will fail. The reason it will fail is because Netlify is basically going to take the code that we checked into GitHub, try to build it, but it's not going to find the environment variable because we didn't check that in. It's in our local .env file. So what we need to do here is we need to add an environment variable for, where do I add it though? For this app in Netlify. There we go, environments. Does that make sense? Yeah. So let me do this. Okay, and now if I save it, go to deploys, we'll see here that it failed because it will tell us, let's just zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so space ID is required and access token is required, but they were undefined. So now if I go and redeploy manually this time, it should not fail. So when we look at what I started with here, we did the JSON. We every time we did the JSON, we did the GraphQL calling out to the JSON. We did it now for the CMS, for the Contentful. We have our React Gatsby app, and we're deploying to Netlify. Every time we check into GitHub or update our code in our master branch, Netlify picks it up and updates our website. But what happens when we update our Contentful API? Because this is not a dynamic website, so the Gatsby site needs to regenerate those static files and redeploys them, or Netlify needs to do that every time we make a change, because this is not happening when I load the site. It's already pre-built and being rendered. So when I make a data change in the CMS, I need to rebuild and redeploy my website. I hope I'm explaining that well, but yeah. So to be able to do that, Netlify needs another webhook, and the way you do that, you create. Again, I go to deploy settings, and I go to build hooks. There we go. So I can come here and I say, okay, well, contentful, and look at the master branch, or build the master branch. And when I do that, it gives me this URL to post to. If I go to Contentful and I go to my webhooks here, I already created 2 for other demos websites, but I add a new one. I call it Netlify, and then I post. I create a post to it. I don't think you need to change anything in here. If you had like environment IDs, you can add them, but we don't for this site. And now, every time I make a change, let's go and make a change here. Every time I make a change, and let's say, oh, I already tested it. Let's say it's really not homecoming 2, it's just homecoming. And I publish. What Netlify is going to see now is, oh, well, it canceled the other one because it found the next one. And now it's saying deploy triggered by hook called Contentful. And now it's going to build and update my site. I think that's it. That's all I had. This is, so basically, just to recap, created a Gatsby site based on React, use some React components, use GraphQL to fetch data from both Json and Contentful headless CMS, deployed it to Netlify, and we have webhooks that are auto-deploying every time a data change or a data change happens, or a code change happens. And let's see if once this is done, yeah, we should have everything now up with an order. All right, any questions? Anything I can explain more or go over again? And let me switch back, I guess, to this Zoom so I can look at you guys.
Very cool. You showed the like A/B testing thing with Netlify. Is it possible to set up like separate environments, like a staging or a testing environment that you deploy to first and check, and then?
Yeah, so that you wouldn't do that in the split testing. You would do it in something called branch deploys. So if you go here, they keep changing it. So I can let's see, or they change where it is. I think it's somewhere here. There we go. So production branch. So what this is doing is automatically build deploy previews for all pull requests, but you can also do branch. So here it's actually already set up to do that. So every time you create a new branch and push the code, it will deploy it for you. So if you have one that's called dev, there'll be a URL for dev or one for QA. There'll be one already existing. If you don't want to do that, you can disable it. I think the other thing I can talk about in for Gatsby here is they have these where is it, themes, I think, yeah, themes. So like, well, it's part of, I guess it's let's see, using the Gatsby theme, where is it? There was one that I just saved today that was pretty cool. Where is GitHub? There's GitHub. Yeah, Novella, I think it's called. But like, look at that. It's like if you, I might update my blog to this. Like it's just really simple, really easy, and they're like you will get all the CSS that they've created and like different. I think you can do like night mode and stuff right out of the box. Like you don't have to think about it.
Nice. And are all those themes like permissively licensed?
I think this is like all it says here is to just give us. I think a lot of them are MIT.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depends on the theme. The ones that are on the Gatsby website, they're usually all MIT, or you can reuse them. I was thinking of something that else I could show, but my personal, like my website doesn't have anything on it. Like it's really just like a stupid logo. But like if I go to, so I have like a blog that I never blog on, and if I want to like, this is another one. This is not using Contentful. This is using, so I use the login through GitHub, and then here this is just like a very simple CMS that I can write like markdown blog, and I just hit publish, and it really just checks in this this like page or the content of this page. It checks it in as a blog entry on GitHub, and then Netlify picks it up and deploys it as a blog post. So again, you can do simple. But see, like I don't have a draft version on this. I didn't do that, but I didn't write most of this. I took it from like a starter project that they had on the Gatsby site. So you can, but like yeah, I'm using identity here, which is another cool thing that Netlify provides. I think someone said, oh, thank you, Andrew. I think someone was saying if it was recorded. I believe it was. Ed was asking. Yep. So if there's nothing else, thank you guys. This was fun.
Feras, thanks for presenting. Did anyone have any last thoughts or questions or hypotheticals that they wanted to throw out there?
Is this something that you could or would even make sense to use with like Electron? I noticed when you were going through the plugins, there was one for like offline.
Yeah, I've personally, to be honest, I've never thought about it. Let me see. Yeah, there is offline capabilities, like a Gatsby offline plugin offline, but I'm not really sure.
The offline mode is going to be like a PWA integration.
Yeah.
So if you have an Electron app, you're probably on a desktop and you're kind of local and effectively offline anyway. So you probably look for a different type of solution than that. My personal site is built using Nuxt, which is the Vue.js version of Next, which is the server-side rendered and static rendered version of Gatsby.
Yep.
A bunch of these have like a Workbox plugin, which will bring in Google's Workbox PWA library, which is really great because configuring PWAs can be a real pain. And they will set up like the service worker and manifest to cache all your files and assets. And that way, when someone visits your site, the next time they come to it in their phone, they don't have to be online and they can still view all the content of the site.
Yeah, and I just Googled like Gatsby Electron, and the first question thing was, is it dumb idea to try and use Gatsby in an Electron app? It seems like it's not the best way to go about it, but I think what you mentioned about like Nuxt and Next, Next, I think, is doing a lot. I think the newer version of Next enables a lot, or like matches up with Gatsby very well in terms of like the static site generation, and Gatsby still lacks on the server side rendering. So I think if I don't know, like I think both of them are pretty cool and work very well for, but I think Next is kind of like edging a little bit at this point. I don't know.
Some people really like Next and Nuxt for the previewing.
Yeah.
They are able to dynamically render content.
Mm-hmm.
You can deploy them to a server and get like a preview mode of all the changes you've made without having to do the whole compilation of all the static assets.
Exactly.
So and Gatsby has a paid solution for that kind of, but I haven't heard it as ergonomic and it works as well as Nuxt and Next doing their dynamic generation.
Do you think as an ecosystem of like starter projects and themes and stuff, which one do you think has more?
Gatsby's the leader for
right?
sure.
Yeah. That's I think that's where Gatsby excels, but Next has a lot of advantages as well.
Yeah. There's a service called StackBit that lets you kind of get all these tools pre-packaged together, and you click, and all of a sudden you have the GitHub repository set up, you have Netlify CMS configured, you have Netlify deploy all configured, and within 30 seconds you have a template and a site running. So you don't have to you don't even have to clone anything locally. You can just click, and you have a site that you can update content on live, and it will work, and you have a blog, basically.
Yeah, the one, not to derail here, but like the thing I'm really excited about now is GitHub is releasing this new, I forget what they call it, but basically you can use VS Code right inside of GitHub in the browser, because I have a lot of small apps that I don't want to like pull, and I just want to make a simple change, and sometimes you just want to test it before you make an update, and it's going to be really cool to do it through GitHub, like right from like VS Code right inside of GitHub.
Yeah, the code spaces.
Code spaces,
yeah,
that's what it's called. Yeah.
About that.
Yeah,
it's crazy that live share works for that too.
Yeah.
So you can live share in the browser with someone on a repository you haven't cloned with all your extensions.
Well, I think because VS Code is effectively like a web app, right?
Yeah, it's Electron.
And it's Electron, yeah. So you can render it in Chrome. Yeah, I mean, I've heard about, like, I learned about Gatsby now almost 2 years ago, and I started like playing with it. I haven't done anything like serious production with it, but I've seen people who have, and I think it's pretty cool.
The company that I was nominated as an MVP for, they're a CMS platform, .NET based.
Okay.
But a couple of years ago, they launched a content as a service product.
Nice. That's
a competitor with Sanity and Contentful and all those. It's called Content, spelled with a K.
Oh.
They're kind of trying to position themselves for the enterprise. So if you did have a company that had a website with 100,000 pages and content items that needed to be delivered both to a website, but also maybe digital billboards and mobile apps and TV ads, all sorts of stuff like this. And you want to be able to manage that content centrally. You kind of go for their product because that's the scale that they're working at.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And you can like build put a Gatsby on top of it, or okay.
So they have like a free developer plan that you can just sign up for, and it's free forever. And they have SDKs for Gatsby, for GridSum, for I think they have one for Nuxt and Next. And then you use the same sort of GraphQL content delivery API to pull in the content that you create there. And
that's pretty cool.
It's great for us developers right now. Everyone's competing in this space.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you get to the point where like you can't keep up with all the stuff that are coming out.
Oh yeah.
But
that's why I imagine you put your like blog site on Gatsby just so that you had some opportunity to like
Exactly.
do it, right? I that's the same reason that I put mine on Nuxt it was like 2 years ago, because I was like, this is an up and coming thing. People are going to be talking about it. I want to know what I'm talking about if I say something.
Yeah.
So I need to spend a weekend, trying this out and building it. And
yeah, and like hopefully, just like, I mean, yes, I prepared a lot of stuff and I was copy pasting a lot of code, but like, hopefully I was able to show that this is getting, like, you can get up and running really quickly now with all of it. Just if I think that what takes longer is deciding on which stack you want to use, right? But once you make a decision, it's like up and running and you're ready to go. So
I think getting all that done with all the explanations in an hour and a half is pretty good.
Thank you. All right.
Well, cool, guys. Thanks everyone for attending tonight, and thank you, Feras, for presenting. That was really awesome. Yeah, if the recording worked, I will figure out how to edit out that whatever private API key thing that popped up on that one screen or whatever.
Don't worry. You can change it. I think my space ID I might not be able to change it, but it's fine. This is the free version and it will, I don't know if there's a rate limit. I'll delete it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't spend time trying to hide that space ID.
Well, I could do it. I could. I just need to make sure that the recording worked. All right.
Yeah, because I basically, after the first time I showed it, I stopped caring and I was like showing it everywhere. So you're going to have to like look for it in multiple places. Don't worry about it. I really doubt anyone is going to try to look for, my MCU timeline.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll check and see if the recording worked all right, and then I will I'll have to make a YouTube page for the Akron Software Craftsmanship meetup or something like that, and get that uploaded. Yeah, again, thank you for presenting. This was awesome. Thanks everyone for attending. I will post in the group as to whether or not we're meeting in June and or July. Not sure yet, but more to come on that. Yeah, everyone have a good evening, and I will talk to you soon.
Talk to you. Thank you, guys.
See you guys.
Thank you.